Good evening and welcome to Raconteurs News. This
Tuesday.
Yeah, it's Tuesday, but it's grey again. I suppose I'm going to have to stop saying grey Tuesday, aren't I? Welcome to Tuesday evening on Raconteurs News. I'm Andy Young, co-host as always Jason Holmes. Good evening, Jason. How you doing, mate?
Good evening, Andy, and good evening, everybody, as well at home, sat at home in Radio Land. I always wanted to say that.
Yeah, we've got some fantastic guests lined up. We've had some fantastic guests recently, but this is one I've been particularly looking forward to because it's on my kind of pet favourite subjects, something that kind of touched on my life many years ago and has a few times since. So it's with great pleasure this evening that we welcome to Raconteurs News, Joanne Summerscales. Good evening, Joanne.
Hello, and thanks for having me on.
You're more than welcome. Now, we hoping to have your co-author Bill Brooks on. Is Bill around yet? He is.
Bill's just popped up on my screen.
Are you there, Bill?
I am, yes. I was wondering if you were going to speak to me. I wasn't sure.
Oh, so we didn't realise you were there just yet, mate. We've been trying to call you in.
Just got on.
Good evening and welcome, Bill.
Same to you. Yeah, good evening.
So, we're here this evening to talk about your book, but also mainly about your experiences, Bill.
Right.
Well, that is the book was written. It's not just about this is a book. This is a book. It's about this is a social document. This is encapsulating Bill's experiences over 60 odd years. And, of which he was unaware for 2/3 of his life. That still always gets me when I think about that.
Wow, that's incredible.
I think you should start off by telling us what the book's called, and then we can start getting into its contents.
Yeah, you know what? Absolutely. I should have had one in front of me. It's called 44, and we put based on an ex-soldier's true story of lifelong encounters involving alien abduction, Men in Black, persecution by the Freemasons, and a serial killer. I might have got one of two of those components the wrong way round, but essentially some of those elements which are part of this based on a true story. Now, we put based on a true story because we needed to give Bill a little bit of safety wiggle room. So if he was challenged either militarily or in any other way from the Freemasons, he can say it's based on. But I can tell you that it is fact, as far as I can possibly tell after nearly 4 years' work with this gentleman who initially came to speak to me because he just had a series of heart attacks and strokes all within a week, which had nearly killed him. And finally, he thought, I just want to flipping well get my story heard, to try and get some understanding, to try and see if there's anybody else out there who'll listen and who can maybe help throw some light on it.
Interesting, particularly the heart attacks and strokes. Now, what was this a catalyst for some investigation to begin in what had been going on, and where did it lead?
You mean the heart attacks and strokes?
Yeah, how did that?
Well, Bill, I don't know if it was the culmination, and I don't want to speak for Bill. It was a culmination of many years of humongous stressors, including the ET stuff, but also perpetrated by the mind control. He also was subject to mind control in the army, sadly, an unwilling victim, and as well as military-orientated ET abduction, as well as all the other abduction stuff, and then the persecution involving Freemasons. So, Bill, I don't know whether you want to just say how you came to be so poorly, which was the result of all those stresses finally, and then maybe we can, I don't know what the boys want to do, whether you want to go to a specific incident or how Bill got to realize what had happened, even because this, I have to say, if I can just say it as an introduction about Bill as a person, he's a wonderful guy. He's a rootin' tootin', beer drinking, woman loving guy who did not believe in UFOs and would have thought people like myself are complete nutters, as he once told me, or he's actually told me several times now. But we've got to be great friends over this sharing. We've become great comrades. And his story is exceptional. Everybody's story is exceptional, I know, but he has some components which are particularly mind-boggling. So, Bill, do you want to pick that up and just talk about how you came to contact me initially and that poorly time?
Yeah, I was going through a bit of a bad time over the years previous to that, with the breakup of my son's mother. I took my son's custody when he was 7, so we had a lot of problems from I believe to be the Freemasons. Whether it was to do with anything to do with ET, I'm not sure, but I know it was Freemasons. But I don't know if it was to do with my past or not, even though my cousin was killed by the Freemasons. I know that because he told me he was going to die, and how he was going to die, and it happened. And I didn't believe it at the time, until I was 44. This happened when I was 25. He was about 27, 28. And I didn't realise until I was 44 what had actually happened to him. You know, I mean, I didn't believe in any of this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Till something told me, and something drastic happened to me one night, and I had a recollection of the whole of my life, stuff that I'd missed.
It was a little bit like what they call an NDE, a near-death experience. It played out in Bill's, in Bill's life, just like you hear people reporting. So he saw every aspect of his life from childhood onwards. And also what was very interesting, and I was just going to say, Bill, about perhaps recounting what your cousin had actually said to you, but also what was interesting is that Bill had a severely disabled brother, physically disabled, and at one point they shared rooms. And tell that bit of the story about when you came out of the army.
Sorry, Joanne. I don't mean to butt in, but
no, not at all. I'm just trying to give
let's get a picture of Bill.
Sure.
Sort of his past and who Bill is, and
yeah.
sort of a bit of his life, and bring us up to date to where we are now, and then we can sort of put it into some sort of perspective.
Right. So, what would you like to know about me, Jason? Where are you from, Jason?
I'm from Sheffield. Where are you from, Bill?
From the Black Country.
I've been there today. I've been to Dudley today. King Swinford I've been to.
Oh my God!
That's where I live. That's where this story, very near King Swinford, is where this. I started getting my first encounters that I could remember properly.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, let's go to what's your background? What sort of job? What work have you been in? Give some sort of idea. I'm not going to ask for a number, but give some sort of idea of your age and how long we're talking here. I know you're talking about the last 60 years, so I'm assuming you're sort of that age.
I'm 66.
You're 66, okay. And have you been? What's your background? When this story starts and
I didn't go to school. I'll give you a quick rundown. I didn't go to school. Really, I went for about 5 months and got expelled. I joined the army. Well, I did a few jobs before I joined the army. I joined the army. I came out of the army in '75, and I decided I didn't like work, so I picked up my guitar and learned to sing and play, and that's what I did the rest of my life. And at the same time as I was doing that, I was having these strange encounters at the same time. But until I was 44, I didn't know about the encounters before. And
okay.
if I hadn't have had more abductions after 44, I would have believed it was my mind or some kind of programming from the army or something. But because it carried on happening after, I knew that it was true, and then I started looking at it myself.
Right. When it happened, you sort of thought that it might be false memories that had been implanted in some sort of mind control program.
That's right, yeah.
Right, but after you'd discovered this, you then carried on having these experiences. So then you knew for certain it wasn't a false memory that had been put there.
That's right, yeah.
Okay.
I could have believed it was a false memory.
Yeah.
But I've had this all my life. The actual encounters, as far as I can remember now, stopped approximately 4 years ago.
Mm.
That was the last two that I had. I don't know whether I had one and a reproduction of the same one. It was really weird. It seemed like the same abduction twice in a week. But,
wow.
that was the last encounters I've had. It was 4 years ago.
And
I saw something in the same area that the last encounters about 7 weeks ago.
Uh-huh.
I saw it in a cylinder shape above me. But that just shot off within it was there for about 50 seconds, and then it shot off towards Shrewsbury.
Right, Bill. Is there anything you can particularly or perhaps suspect is the reason why it stopped, or is it just a mystery to you?
I haven't got a clue. I don't know why it starts or stops. I haven't got a clue. I mean, I've got no control at all in any of this. It is beyond my control. When things happen, when something comes to my head, it is nothing to do with me. It is someone else doing it to me. I've got no special powers. I'm not Superman. You know, I don't fly around the universe. You know.
No, that's a fair comment. Oh, we seem to have lost Joanne off the call there. What's going on? We'll try and get Joe back in a few minutes. So to help people out, I mean, what a lot of people are familiar with as an abduction experience is possibly Travis Walton's story from Fire in the Sky. Is yours anything like that, or is it totally different?
Well, I'm not really sure because the Travis Walton story, from what I've gathered, the Hollywood version was a lie. He wasn't dragged around the ship. He wasn't dragged around anywhere.
No.
Now, that was my experience. I mean, I can tell you about the abduction that I remember all of. I've got one memory of what I've been abducted loads of times. But when I had the download, as we call it, when I was 44, that memory of the one abduction came back completely.
Mm-hmm.
As far as I know, it's near enough complete. And I could run you through that one if you want.
Yeah, please do.
I was delivering cookers for a firm in Dudley, as they say in Dudley. And I was doing Southampton and Evesham. Do you know where them two places are? You probably do.
I know Evesham very well, yeah.
Yeah, I know Evesham, yeah.
Near Worcester. Evesham near Worcester, and Southampton is the other way. I don't know where it is now. Down south.
Southampton's on south coast in Hampshire.
Yeah, I said he's down south somewhere. I haven't got a map anymore. I've been off the road for years. And I delivered the cookers. This is a very, very strange story, and it is so hard to believe. It took me a while to believe it to myself.
Mm-hmm.
I was delivering cookers. I delivered Southampton, and I finished about probably 9 o'clock to 9:30 or something. And I was making my way back to Evesham. Well, the route I took me through near Oxford. I forgot the name of the place. Abingdon, near Oxford.
Yep.
And I decided to get some chips, you know, get something to eat, get some coffee, park up, sleep there the night, and deliver the cookers on the way back the next day, save going home and coming back. So I pulled up a dirt track. Sound like the a TV program, this Billy. I pulled up this dirt track, and as I was going towards this field, there was a house to my left which I hadn't noticed at this time. really pitch dark. As I was going towards the field that I was going to park next to, I looked on the way towards the field. It looked like a Christmas tree, but when I got to it, it wasn't a Christmas tree shape. It was like a Catherine wheel spinning, and the sparks that were coming off it at a distance looked like a Christmas tree. So I carried on eating my chips, and the next thing I see is going around the field like a spotlight spotting around the field. I saw rabbits running away. I saw in between these lights spotting the field, I saw all the cows at the bottom of the field, up a corner. And that I was eating at the same time as doing this. I was just glancing, really. I wasn't really looking as such. I was glancing, and I saw a triangle coming to the middle of the field, and all the cows, instead of being at the bottom of the field, I didn't see them move at all. Instead of being at the bottom of the field, they were in the middle of the field, and I saw one cow. I saw what looked like many coveralls around the cow, but it was so bright, the light was so bright, I had trouble seeing. And it was a triangle where the light was coming out of. It was like a triangle shape. And the cow was going into the triangle, up into the triangle. And as that happened, I finished eating and I struck a match to light a cigarette. As I struck the match, all the lights went out, it went pitch dark. And I thought, they've gone. But my radio was on quite low. Mm-hmm. I was listening to memories, memories like the corners of my mind, that one,
Yeah.
I was listening to that. And the radio went all squelchy, or, off channel, squelchy, but very loud. So I got my head under the dashboard to fiddle with the radio to try and get it working. And at the same time, the whole thing lit up. Really bright lights inside the vehicle, outside the vehicle, everywhere. Just bright, one massive bright white lights, or light, if you would. And as I was coming up, I was raising my head up, which was now, I was on the left-hand side of the vehicle. As I was raising my head up, I saw something that looked like leaning, I know it sounds crazy, the Leaning Tower of Pisa, but with mirrors pointing in different directions all over it. Like a good masking device, I think, because you couldn't really see anything.
Mm-hmm.
You could see all around you, but you couldn't see the object that was in front of you.
I get you.
That's some kind of masking device, I'm sure. Anyway, as I was coming up, I saw this, and then as I came further up, I saw that. As I came further up, I saw in my mirror, in my rear view mirror, there was a black window behind me that went into the back of the van that I was in. Mm-hmm. And as I looked into the mirror, I could see alien faces, aliens, what I believe to be aliens anyway. And as I actually got myself fully into the driver's seat, right in front of my eyes, which I could see in the mirror, but thought they were in the back of the van, were the three alien faces, near enough on the glass of the vehicle. At the same time, behind them was there was a wood at the back. The ship was in front of me, slightly to the left, I believe.
Bill, when you say alien faces, can you describe them to us? What
the normal, really, that people see, the greys, like the large head, large black eyes, hardly any nose at all, just two little holes where the nose should be, I think there was lumps where the ears should be, but there was no ears. It was just, I think there was lumps. You know, I think so. That's what was on the screen of my van. You know, staring at me. I mean, of course, I didn't believe in it. I didn't even know what a grey was. I didn't believe in any of it. Even though my brother kept trying to tell me I was being abducted, you know, and other people have tried to tell me as well. I just wouldn't believe it. I just would not believe it. But I mean, I didn't believe it when this happened. I just looked. Well, I was completely bewildered to start with. As you can imagine, it was such a shock to the system. When I looked behind these three faces, I could see a wood about 400 yards away. I could see this ship that was in front of me, slightly to my left, as I said. And out of the ship, it was orange glow, like an orange. I call it a jelly light. It was like a thick light. Inside it was like tubes of white light coming down, and it looked like Star Trek, you know, where things disintegrate and come back together again. You know, falling snow and then like a jigsaw, and then a person standing, well, a grey standing there.
A bit like a person being out of tune, like on a TV set.
That exactly. That's funny. Funny you mentioned that. Funny you mentioned that because I mentioned that to Joanne last night. Didn't I, Joanne? Can't hear you, Joanne.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah, I talked about that last night or the night before. What I saw of them, I really forgot about this in the book, to tell you the truth. It was like they were turning negative and coming back. You get that?
Yeah.
They were turning negative, coming back very quickly, turning into negatives and coming back. It was as though they were in our dimension, but not in our dimension. Sort of in between the two. And then they took me through the glass. But before they took me through the glass, they put their heads into the cab where I was sitting. They put their heads in, and their heads seemed to stick to the glass. It was like cling film on their heads. But the rest of the glass was okay, except where their heads come through. Didn't seem to damage the glass or break it or anything. One put his head straight in front of mine, and the other two, one got one side and one the other. Then I went through the glass. I did see, as this was happening, at the same time, there seemed to be molten metal falling on my van. If you've ever been in a foundry and seen metal spitting out of the what have they got it in? I forgot the names of things now.
Crucible.
Sorry?
A crucible.
Yeah, it could be. I don't know the names of the things now. It's been a long time. I worked in a foundry before I went into the army.
I should really know, being in Sheffield, shouldn't I, really? But I don't know what you're talking about.
Sheffield Steel, you've got no foundries. Isn't it ridiculous?
Yeah.
But then I went into the ship, and as I went into the ship, I was upright. I wasn't walking, of course. As far as I can imagine, I wasn't walking. Can't walk on air, can I? Well, I can't do it now anyway, if I could do it then. I went into the ship upwards. The greys were around me, inside this orangey light. And the greys were all around me as we went into the ship. I was going forwards into the ship. To my left, there was like rows of jail cells going upwards. And things moving. They looked as though they were alive to me. I couldn't see what they were, but they looked alive, if you understand what I mean. Moving around. Then I was quickly took to the right, and then I was laid on a couch, bed, I don't know what you'd call it, a slab, whatever it was.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how I got onto it. I don't know how I lay down. I can't remember lying down. They must have done that for me or something. I don't know. And I couldn't really see in front of me, to the sides. I didn't mention that. As I was coming in, I could see slightly to the sides. Because I was transfixed going forwards, and my eyes wouldn't move. Nothing would move. I was like paralysed as such, but floating, paralysed. They lay me on this couch type thing, and I could see in front of me. And in front of me, because I was lying near enough flat, I could see in front of me there was not a door, but an opening, like an oval opening. And inside that opening, they were working on a cow, the one that I believe, the one they just brought up that I'd seen go into the triangle. And they did something to it. They raised their hands, and the thing rolled out. And I don't know why, but I knew it was dead. I just knew. And I thought, when I saw that rolled out, and I knew it was dead. Don't ask me how I knew, but I did, which was proved the next morning to be right.
Bill, can I just ask you a question? You know, when you say you couldn't move, did you sort of have the? I mean, you couldn't move. Nothing would move. Your eyes wouldn't move. Anything like that. Did you sort of have the feeling that there was nothing stopping you? It was just that you weren't. You were no longer connected to your body.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. I mean, I didn't feel anything. There was no feelings. While I was on that couch, there was no feelings until they started the experiments where something went up my nose. I felt that. But there was no feelings at that time on the couch. I had no feelings of myself. I couldn't feel my own arms. I couldn't move my eyes. I could use my brain a bit, but not a lot. I was still in shock, I think. As you can imagine, the shock of it is pretty devastating.
There's something that struck me as being very unusual in there, Bill, and I was only listening to the latest update from Richard D. Hall on animal mutilations. And one of the things he was saying is, as far as I'm aware, nobody has ever seen the animals being taken or brought back or anything done to them. So
I have.
Have you ever come across anyone else with that experience, Joanne?
No, Bill is the first and only one, and that, you know, he's got about 3 or 4 firsts actually that I've never heard of before either. Wow. So pretty damn amazing.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, carry on, Bill.
The one thing I will say is that before I wrote this book, and I've still never really looked at anyone else's abductions or any form or manner. I've only written in that book to do with me. I have never listened to anyone else's abduction stories at all. I didn't contaminate myself with anyone else's stories. Mm-hmm. This is just everything that's happened in that book is from me, and it happened. You know, there's a lot more to that book than we've been able to write. There's only a third of my life in that book. There's been a lot more than I can write about.
That's quite some story you've got to tell. Do you think you'll perhaps try and do another book to cover more of your life story, Bill? Or do you think that's a bit much of an ask at your age and given the fact you've health problems?
Yeah, the health problems do interfere with anything I want to do now anyway. But I think I've done really, this book was only, this wasn't a money-making project or of any form like that. Mm-hmm. I mean, this is a cost project. We've had to pay for this. Yeah. I just wanted my story out. I didn't want to die with this story to tell. I didn't want to die with it. You know, I mean, I'm not after fame or fortune. I'm not after anything at all. I really am anonymous. I don't really want anyone to know who I am. You know?
That's fair enough, because we have seen how the finger of ridicule can be pointed at experiences. I've seen so much hassle that people have had because they've come out and told their story. So I can understand that those reservations, absolutely, Bill.
Yeah, I think we can. I think we all can, can't we? You don't need. You don't need. Look, if someone don't want to listen to you, they don't want to listen to you. So.
Well, that's right. That's the way I see it. You know, I mean, the thing is, until I was 44, I was on the other side. And halfway through my life, well, over halfway through my life, I found out now I'm on the different side. Now I'm one of the nutcases now. Before I was one of the sane people. Now I'm a nutter, like all you lot,
Mm.
You know what I mean? I really did not believe any of this. I thought everyone was a lunatic who talked about it. I really did. So I've seen both sides of this coin, and I don't even know which side I want to be on.
Well, welcome to the club. I'm not one of the members. I'm just the minder. I just watch over them all.
Oh, that's brilliant. So
That's a cop out, isn't it?
yeah. So what are some of these other firsts that you've actually had then, Bill?
Well, the first, I think the biggest first for me anyway was being inside a crop circle when it was made.
Mm.
I mean, I had no idea. In 1960, when it happened, there was nobody knew what a crop circle was, and I didn't till years and years later until I thought about it. I think Joanne's gone off again, isn't she, or something?
Oh dear.
Looks like it.
Yeah, we've lost Joanne. Let's try and get her back in.
Are we still on? Or?
Yeah,
Yes, we're still on. Yes.
All right. I think that was the biggest one, really, the crop circle, being inside that when it was made. I mean, I know it sounds very strange that I've had all these different things happen to me. I know it sounds really weird. I found it hard to believe myself. It took me years to believe myself after this, what I call a download. And
Listen, it is weird. It is an odd situation, and but it's your story, and it's your right to tell it.
Mm.
Yeah. So what was the crop circle incident? Did it happen right while you were in the middle?
No, I wasn't in the middle. I was on the outskirts of it.
Right.
I've just gone into the field. And what I used to do is, in the daytime sometimes, because I didn't go to school, I used to go and sit in the crop circle. I used to sit in the field of corn or barley. I was told it was corn, actually, by somebody that I recently spoke to. It was corn they used to put in that field. And I used to lie there and watch the animals run over me, and I looked at the clouds and watched the clouds, make shapes out of the clouds, as kids do. And I saw a big, what I called a massive big white balloon go over my head. Well, then I saw another white balloon go over my head. Then they were about 8 foot round, 8 foot diameter. And then they started spinning around each other, and I was watching them, and then they disappeared. And I got up to find out where they'd gone, and found myself in the middle of a crop circle. What we now know as a crop circle. I didn't know it was a crop circle then. I wouldn't know what a crop circle was.
Mm.
And just inside, further up in this crop circle, was a vehicle. Now, I'm calling it a vehicle because I thought it was something I'd seen in a magazine, Donald Campbell's Bluebird or something. That's what I thought it was. Well, I didn't know what it was. I was a 10-year-old. There was no cars around then, We didn't see vehicles, really.
No, it probably looked like something you'd seen in a magazine.
Yeah, it was like the land speed record thing. But it probably didn't look like that. But that was the only thing I could equate it to. As you can imagine, when you see something that's not been in your mind or you know nothing about, your mind can't make up what it is.
Yeah.
Your mind doesn't compute it as such. You need a reference in your mind.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, you're bound to make comparisons, and those comparisons are not going to be 100% accurate.
I mean, this was probably about 40% accurate. But the problem was I'd only ever seen anything like it that even could resemble it in a magazine with Donald Campbell's Bluebird, which was a long vehicle, really.
Mm.
But I couldn't equate it to anything else big like that. It was big, But the occupants of this vehicle. I'll call it a vehicle. Came down walking towards me. There was 2 grown-ups and 2 youngsters, I believe, unless they were a different type of being, but they all looked the same, except 2 were bigger, and male and a female, which were bigger, as I took as mommy and daddy, and 2 children. That's what I took it as. We started talking. They asked me if they would. Well, I asked them where they were from. They said up there somewhere. I don't know if they told me where. I asked them if they were from God, and they said, no, that's a belief on your planet. Then they asked me if I'd seen any reptiles. Well, I didn't even know what a reptile was. And they started telling me about something to do with they'd broken away from their makers, and there was a problem on our planet. Would I help if I could? And as a kid, as a 10-year-old, I said, yes, of course I will. You know, what do you want me to do? And they said, you'll know at the time. Then I went for a fly with them. I'm cutting this story a bit short, but there's bits and pieces I'm cutting out, which are not probably relevant. I went in the ship with them. When I got into the ship, there was these like round orange balls, about 10 inches across, I suppose, 10 inches of diameter, I suppose. One was floating above this one youngster's head, if they were youngsters. There was one floating somewhere else, I can't remember where that was. And there was one on the floor in front of me. And I picked the one up in front of me and put it on my lap. And one of these youngsters said to me, think with your mind, up and down, left, right. It'll do what you tell it to. And it did, I think. I think they did it for me, but, you know. Then the older people came back, the older ones, the bigger ones. Then I went into a room with them, which is probably the driving room, the cockpit, I don't know what you call it. And there was a glass-like table type structure with lights all the way around it, going up and down at different times. And there was a flat glass type plate, and on top of that was like a child's spinning top. And on top of that was like a glass dome, like a cake, like you put over cakes to stop the wasps from flying in it. And it was about 5.5 foot high, the whole structure of this thing. And the spinning top type thing I've told you was in the middle of it, was spinning. And the guy was talking about revolutions and stuff, which I couldn't understand what he was talking about. I knew nothing about any of this. I was a thick 10-year-old. And as this, they asked me, the woman asked me if I wanted to go for a fly. You know, if I wanted to go for a fly with them. And I said, yeah, of course, you know, 10-year-old kid, I'll have a fly in anything, you know. Mm-hmm. And as this spinning object, like a child spinning top thing, in the middle of this cake, under this cake thing, I call it, as it was spinning, it was disappearing, coming back, disappearing, coming back. And as it disappeared, we took off. As it completely disappeared, we took off. Then we got so far up, I saw the Earth disappear through a round window that was in front of me. I believe it was a window anyway. Mm-hmm. And as we got to a certain point, the lady looked at the fella, because it was male and female. The woman looked at the man. They didn't say anything to each other. That's a point I never mentioned. They talked to me as I'm talking to you, but they didn't seem to speak to each other. But okay. They seemed to know what each other meant all the time. They said, we can't take you any, she just said, we can't take you any further. And then I was back. And as I came out of the ship, I said to them, I said, when will I see you again? And they said, look in the clouds. And that was it, really. There's a bit more to the story, but it's only bits and pieces that didn't really matter.
Mm-hmm.
And that was my first experience. But that wasn't an abduction. That was, I got into the vehicle myself. I wasn't abducted by him at all.
And I think it's interesting when you think that we're talking about 1960, when, you know, crop circles weren't particularly known, and here's this young guy, you know, fully conscious as one's been made, and
Well, you say about crop circles not being known. I mean, really, it was I suppose it was about the 80s that they first came to prominence. But I remember I grew up in the countryside, cornfields all around me, and I remember seeing these things on hillsides.
yeah.
And I thought, what the heck are they? And
I mean, it's not that they haven't been reported before. They have, and they have been reported in ancient times, actually, but not so commonly. It's just that this was way before there was this general consciousness of them. Do you know what I mean? That's really my point.
weren't they known as mowing devils in past
Yeah,
times?
that's right. Yeah, yeah. But Bill, you know, I tell you what, I think it's very interesting just to finish off that Nordic story, and I do think it's relevant. I mean, I don't know what it means or why they did it, but tell them about the bike.
Oh yeah, when I went back to my bike, it didn't disappear. I went looking for it, and I went to where it could be, and I had to walk past that where I put it leaning up against the gate. And when I got back, they'd got it, and they were back, and they gave me my bike. I can't remember the conversation. They just gave me my bike. I was in a bit of a rush, so I had to get back to pick up my sister from school. So I was in a bit of a rush to get back home. You know, I was a bit late. So there was no conversation, and I just got myself back home. But I don't know why the bike disappeared.
But the weird thing is that they had it and they handed it back to you, obviously, because you were getting a bit distressed or stressed out because you know this. If you didn't have your bike, it meant you were going to be late to pick up your little sister, who was only about 5 or 6, something like that. So, you know, and you were on point to look after her. So it was quite important.
I was more bothered about the bike.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's right. You know, growing up in a very poor area, it's not often that, you know, you had these things. So losing it would be a very, very big deal indeed.
It would have been, yeah. But that was that one experience. But I've had quite a few different ones around that period of time. And then I joined the army, and I did. I was a nuclear soldier, and within a fortnight of being in my regiment. Either you guys been in the forces at all?
I've worked closely with them, but I've never been in them.
Right. Well, you do your initial 3 months training, then you go to your regiment.
Mm-hmm.
Well, within a fortnight of being at the regiment, 15 of us were abducted on exercise. That was on an exercise that was. I don't know where it was. I'm trying to think of the name of the place.
Are you talking about Senalaga Rangers?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it was around that area, Senalaga Rangers. Yeah. We were abducted. We were put on exercise, and me and a friend of mine. Well, I'd only known him a week, but we became friends. We were sitting at the end of a track on guard duty. It was our stag, and we weren't relieved, but we weren't really bothered because that meant we hadn't got any work to do. We were just sitting there, and the next thing I know, we see orange smoke coming towards us. Well, John, the guy I was with, Joe, the guy I was with, said it's probably a simulated gas attack. So we ran back to the section to tell an NCO that we were under gas attack.
Mm-hmm.
And we were told the exercise was stood down. It means the exercise was finished. Everybody else had gone to sleep except us two. a couple of idiots sitting at the end of a track while everybody else had gone to bed. Well, we found somewhere on top of an armoured pig Saracen where the canvases were. We found that to sleep on, you know, we got on top of it and lit a cigarette ready to go to sleep, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what had happened, Bill? What had happened to the orange kind of gas stuff? Did that just dissipate, or what happened with that?
Actually, what happened to it, we left it at the end of the track, and with what happened next, I never saw it again. It might have drifted up towards us, I don't know, because we got on top of the Saracen. I never even saw that orange gas again. Well, it wasn't gas. It would have been just a smoke. But I don't know what it was. I mean, John reckoned it might have been a simulated gas attack. So that's what we took it as.
That does remind me, Bill, of another story that's probably very well known to most of our listeners, and that's the Rendlesham Forest story. Because on the third night, when Larry Warren went out into the forest with his colleagues, they were ordered out into a field where there was I think it was described as a yellowish mist. And they were ordered to surround this mist, and then a red light came in over the forest, and about 40 foot above their heads, it exploded silently, but in a massive wall of light, I think they described it, and then a craft appeared in front of them where this orange mist was. So, interesting parallel there.
It was lights from the lighthouse.
Yes, the flying lighthouse that navigated its way through the forest, yeah.
Oh, don't they say some rubbish?
Mm.
They've got to, haven't they? They've got to. It's got to be. They've got to say some rubbish. They've got to say some rubbish. I mean, you know, when you get these incidents where there's perhaps a fighter jet's been scrambled and to intercept something that's on radar, and then this has just gone off and everything. Instead of just coming out, I mean, if they were truthful, if they just came out and went, well, you know what, we haven't got a clue. We don't know what it were. Well, you know, if anybody's got any ideas, let us know.
Whoever's keeping this under wraps is very good at it.
Oh yeah, yeah.
They're very good at this. I mean, as I say, until I was 44 years old, I believed in none of this. Nothing at all. I didn't believe in anything.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So I've been on both sides of the fence on this one.
Yeah, so you have a really profound understanding of what it's like to be skeptical and to be a totally, well, in your case, you were a total non-believer. You didn't brook anything, did you? So, but Bill, what about when you say, you know, what about picking up the story of you being on top of the Saracen and getting yourself bedded down, having a last cigarette before you hit the hay or hit the canvas?
Yeah, sorry, I went away from the story, you know. I was on top of the Saracen, and we saw what we thought were, I can only say what I personally saw. I thought there was parachutes, little parachutes, with flares on the bottom of the parachutes. That's what it looked like to me. But then this thing landed. It wasn't parachutes. I could see something look very large landing in the field next to it, the next field to us. Where some of the guys were as well. Some of the vehicles were in that field as well. Our vehicle was just in the next field, just right next to it. But I saw I saw the guys walking towards the vehicles, and they seemed to be in a trance or a sleep or sleepwalking, or they just seemed to move along, no noise and nothing. And I went to get down off the vehicle, and I had to get down with my back towards the wood that was behind me. There was a wood behind me.
Mm-hmm.
And as I was getting down, Joe, the guy that was with me on the top of the vehicle, said, "Don't go." I can just remember him saying, "Don't go." When I went to get down to look what was going on. And as I put my feet to the deck and turned, there was a guy just coming towards me about 8 yards away from me. with a very dark type coverall, type all-in-one coveralls, I think they're called. That's what we used to call them anyway. We used to call them coveralls. With a shiny light bluish badge on the, I think it was the right hand sleeve, the one that he had the gun in. And he had a gun in his hand, and this gun would look like a 9mm, but larger. And he cocked it the same way. He put his hand on the top, pulled the breech back that way. And so he said to me, walk into the light, and I could still thinking about John saying, don't go. And he just pointed it towards my head. And I went, I think the best thing I can do is to go. And so I went towards the light, and that's the last thing I remember. Until the next day we were on parade. And Joe was next to me saying, did you know what happened last night? And I said, no. He said, you don't remember anything. And I remembered nothing at all. And there were quite high brass officers on parade, which really for 15 blokes would not happen normally. But I didn't know that. I'd only just joined the army. I didn't know that. And they made us sign another official secrets act. I'd already signed the nuclear one. And this was another one we had to sign. I don't know what it was. I just signed it. Because the guys with the guns were still behind us while we were on parade. So that was that one.
But mention the uniform, Bill. That's just absolutely fascinating.
Oh yeah. Some of the uniforms were out of date for these guys. They were in BDs. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, but battle dress, brown khaki type, thick, horrible material that used to make you itch. And the shirts ended up the same. The shirts, we still had the same shirts, but the actual combat gear that we were using was just green, just a green, like a cotton nylon type material, not that woolly type material of the BDs, you know. But yeah, that was unusual that they were dressed in BDs, some people. And then we a few weeks later, we were coming back after being down Senalaga somewhere, drinking, as we did. And we got took again by a railway track. And John knew again that we'd been took. And he said to me, he said, do you remember what happened? I said, no. And I still didn't remember until I was 44 about that abduction. But I don't remember what happened. I don't even remember being taken and put back. That's all I remember of the abductions. Most of my abductions, that's the same. You know, I remember being taken, remember being brought back, but the middle part was completely gone. You know?
Bill, what about just recounting sort of years forward on, just linking with Joe again, how you found a number and you thought, God, it would be fantastic if I could find somebody to corroborate my story, and then you made the call.
Yeah. I got hold of his brother, and he said he couldn't remember me, but that John was his brother, and you know he'd only met me once, and that was just to say hello with his brother. He said that his brother had gone raving mad. He'd locked himself away for 40 years, believing he was being abducted by aliens. And so his brother thought, the guy I was talking to thought John had gone absolutely crazy. And I said, he hasn't gone crazy. I said, he's telling the truth. It's happened to me as well. I'm the same. That's why I need to talk to him. And I couldn't get to talk to him. And I told his brother about the abduction in the army. And he said, when was that? And I said, 1968. And he said, it couldn't have been. We weren't in the army then. We were in the army in the 50s. And I
mean, isn't that? I mean, that's just jaw-dropping stuff. I mean, and Bill has had this time slip stuff happen not infrequently. I'll tell you, it's absolutely Amazing.
Wow.
I hope it gets made into a film. I really do. I want to watch it.
It
I'd
sounds.
like to watch it myself as a film too. I really would like to watch my life story as a film.
I mean, it's
please.
completely bonkers. I mean, you
So
go,
strange.
really?
You know, when I first remembered all this at 44, I thought I'd gone raving mad.
Mhm.
I actually thought I'd had a mental breakdown. For a few years, I thought I was mentally insane. You know.
But then I went next door to 46 and I still remember it.
Very good, Jason. I like that.
Yeah, we did. My experience is nothing to compare to yours, Bill. But I mean, I saw something which I couldn't work out when I was 12 years old, and I made a pact with my friend who saw it with me that we wouldn't speak about it because we were frightened of getting locked away in the loony bin.
Yeah, you are, aren't you?
Yeah, and I actually totally forgot about it. I had 2 sightings between then and when it came back to me, and all it was, I was just watching a film on TV or computer. Somebody mentioned a blue ball of light, and it hit me like a ton of bricks. It was like I was back there, being 12 years old again, but it was over 35 years later. But in that meantime, I had 2 experiences where I'd seen what I assume were craft of some description, but it never came back to me that I'd had experience as a 12-year-old. It was really, really quite strange when it happened. But my other half said to me, "Oh my God, what's wrong? You've gone white as a sheet."
Yeah. I understand completely what you're talking about because that's been my impression on a few occasions after the download because the download showed me Abingdon, which I told you about,
Mm-hmm.
where I went into the ship and all that.
Yeah.
That was the abduction on that occasion. But the rest of the rest of what we call a download happened slowly because I honestly believe that I'd only ever been abducted once after the download.
Right.
Just thought I'd been abducted once. That was Abingdon, and that was a mistake. You know, it was just an accident. I was wrong place, wrong time, whatever. I thought that was it. But as the years started to go on, and I started to believe my own story as such, things started to hit me back, and wow, how could I forget that? Wow, how could I forget that? Wow, how could I forget that?
Yeah.
And that, I think you might have had that. Wow, how could I forget that?
Yeah.
Did you have that? How could I forget that?
Yeah, well, it just didn't make any sense to me how I could have had this really quite profound experience at the age of 12, 2 hours or so of missing time, and just completely forgot about it for a good 35 years. It didn't make any sense to me at all at the time. I'm still not sure. I've got no real idea why I forgot it. Probably it was the fear. I don't know.
Well, we don't know, though. I mean, with my story, I mean, I've put in the best I can what happened, you know, as best as I can, as my brain. I've put in what my brain's seen, you know.
Mm-hmm.
As I say, if things are wrong, it's not because I'm lying. It's because I've got it, because my brain's got it wrong, you know.
Yeah. So when you had this download experience, Bill, was it just purely a download of your own experiences, or was there any other kind of information that came along with that?
Everything came back.
Mm-hmm.
Everything, not just because I had memory problems before that. Of remembering the day before.
Oh, okay.
I'm better now. I'm a bit better now. I mean, I'm getting old now anyway. My memory's not too good as it is anyway now.
Yeah.
But I did have memory problems up until I was 44. I couldn't remember the day before. You'd have to remind me what I'd done. You know.
Oh, that's strange.
But when that download came, my whole life came back,
Mm-hmm.
and it seemed like the whole of my life came back in seconds. But I saw it all. I saw every little tiny bit of it. It felt like seconds. So the human brain, I think, is a lot bigger than we think it is. There's a lot more to it. We're not using it properly somehow.
Oh, absolutely. We've no idea how it works, really, have we? I mean, scientists tell us they've got an idea, but when you start looking into it, they haven't got an explanation for most of what goes on in there.
No, I don't think so either. But all this information started to come back slowly.
Mm-hmm.
So I understand exactly what you meant. When you're 12 years, suddenly bang, it's back again, and that's quite a shock. It's quite a shock to your system. I've had lots of them, so I understand. You've had one. I think you've had, as you say, you've had one.
Mm-hmm.
I've had lots of them, and so I've begun to understand them as such, because you do start to understand things a little bit, even though I know nothing about what's happened to me. Really, I've sort of understand a little bit.
Yeah.
I seem to understand more than anyone that's not been took.
Yeah. So can we take it from that all the memories that came back to you in the download were memories of what had happened to you? There wasn't any other kind of messages or anything like that you were given?
No. The only time that I had a strange one was 9/11. The day before 9/11, I told my partner at the time, who's my son's mother,
Mm-hmm.
I told her at the time, I said, get a holiday now. And she said, why? I said, because America will be attacked tomorrow, and it's the end of the world. I actually believed I was trying to get some time off, because I was playing 6 nights a week down the coast, and I was so sick of playing. I was so sick of going on stage. Mm-hmm. I needed a break, and I believed my mind had made it up to have a break from playing. And the next day we got to the caravan side, and the first planes were hitting. And my partner grabbed my son's hand, looked at me and said, you frightened me. She said a bit more than that, but I won't swear.
Yeah, fair enough.
And walked out. She didn't come back for the rest of the day.
That's absolutely incredible, Bill. Oh God, I've just noticed we've gone past the first hour. What we normally do at the end of the first hour, we play a quick tune so we can grab a cuppa if we need to, or have a quick comfort visit. So if that's all right with you, I'll just put a quick tune on, and we'll be back in about 3.5 minutes.
Lovely, thank you very much.
Okay. And welcome back to Raconteurs News this Tuesday evening, when we're joined by Joanne Summerscales and Bill Brooks. Unfortunately, Skype's playing the silly games with us again, and Joanne keeps disappearing. So we'll try and add Joanne back to the call. No, it's not having it just yet. Are you there, Bill?
I'm here, yeah.
Oh, lovely, mate. Yeah, sorry about that. We keep losing Joanne. Certain subjects that we cover, we do tend to get a bit of a problem with Skype, but we'll soldier on best we can, and I'll add Joanne back as soon as I possibly can. So, yeah, what would you like to tell us about next, Bill?
Well, really, my whole life's been like a dodgem of this, that, and the other. Different things happening to me in different locations, and. But as I say, they did stop about 4 years ago. The whole business. But the army abductions, and then the next abductions, Abingdon and all these things. I mean, I can't even describe how I feel about them, because they just seem to sail past my head. Mm-hmm. All this time. You say that you too have had some kind of experiences, haven't you?
Yeah, well, what I had, I just saw, I was out for a bike ride with a mate. We were coming home, summer's evening, rounded a corner, and about 100 to 150 yards away, there was what I described then as it looked like the sun had come out of the sky, but it was blue coloured, a real deep blue colour, and it was hovering about 30 foot above this road junction. It was about 30 foot in diameter, but it was hovering 10 to 15 feet above the road junction. And we got off the bikes, and we stood and watched it for what seemed like a few seconds, and then it shot off to the horizon. But what I didn't realise until I recalled it some 35 years later was that when it shot off towards the horizon, it left like light trails behind it, like you see in sci-fi movies, but it was in a dark sky. So those few seconds that we thought we were watching it, it actually got dark. And I don't know what happened in what we thought were those few seconds, but when we got home, we got a rocket for being about 2 hours late home. And I distinctly remember we were on time when we headed home. That's all that's come back to me, really. I've no recollection of what happened when we were stood looking at that thing, whether we were contacted, whether we went inside it or anything like that. No recollection whatsoever. I'd love to know, but I've kind of toyed with the idea of regression, but I understand that can be very unreliable, and you can end up not really knowing what's the true memory and what's been put in there.
That's why I haven't had any regression at all. I don't trust people, I don't trust this business at all. It's like belief. I don't believe everybody I talk to,
Mm-hmm.
I just don't. I'm still a skeptic in some ways. I'm even skeptical about my own stories. What I'm telling you. I'm even skeptical myself. I can't think of any other way of telling you what happened.
Yes. Well, I've just actually got a message from one of our other hosts, and he's obviously quite familiar with your story, because he says that he recalls that you went out on a delivery and had quite a strange experience where you saw yourself driving in the opposite direction.
Yeah, that's right. Well, that's the story I was telling you about Abingdon.
Oh, yeah.
That was the Abingdon story I was telling you about.
Mm-hmm.
When I came back, they asked me where the cookers were. And I said, I've delivered them. They said, you couldn't have done, not in one day. And I said, it wasn't in one day. I stayed out last night. You couldn't have done. They said, you couldn't have done. We don't work Sundays. And I said, what do you mean? So what happened was, I think that they'd taken me and brought me back in the wrong time. And they had to swap me back round again. And that's what I believe. That's the only explanation I can find for that strange occurrence. There's quite a story there, really. That's a very shortened version of what I've put in the book. There's a whole chapter on that incident, different little things that happened. It's very difficult to try and talk everything, if you know what I mean. That's why it was easier to write than to talk about it,
I've got an interesting. I've had quite a bit of experience with that sort of thing, and I find that it's usually associated with, and if you're really looking and you really know what you're looking for, it's associated with déjà vu. You'll get déjà vu at a point where there is you're going to see yourself at a different point in time, and then you get déjà vu.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow.
How does that work with other people seeing you though, and stuff like that?
Sorry, say again.
I was just going to say, if that's déjà vu, then I don't know how far you got with the story, because I, as usual, they've been doing this to me a lot recently, making sure I'm off at various points. In that story, and also, if we're talking about déjà vu, how come it has a physical impact on the physical body? I'm just putting a question out there. And this particular point is the fact that Bill had looked like, we might call it these days, radiation burns down the wrong side of his body for a driver. So it's as if he'd had his left hand, as if he'd been a left-hand driver, and if that part of his body had been exposed to something, but not the normal other side. And there were other things that also allude to that. The fact that there was this other person unloading, as well. That was, we haven't got our heads wrapped around that. Could it be that doppelganger, or, what was that? And what was that as he was seeing himself coming toward him? I don't know if I'm stepping out of the story here. I don't know what you've said about from that point, but.
Well, to be fair, I mean, the story you've now told it's got a little bit more meat on the bones. And what I was talking about is when people report seeing themselves, that it's usually associated with deja. It's usually associated with deja vu. Now, I'm not trying to say that that's an explanation for this. That was just
no. It's interesting, you know, honestly, because we don't know what that is, but there's got to be some along the line somewhere a rational explanation for it. And when I say rational, I'm not talking about rational in terms of our physics currently necessarily. I mean, at some point along the line of our knowledge, we'll get to know how this is even possible.
Well, the whole deja vu thing fascinates me because I remember as a child, I was taken on a trip for a few days in London and went down and stayed with family. And I was a real boffin as a kid. I was really into me science and history and all that kind of. So we went traipsing off to see all the museums, and I'd never been to London in my life. But I was saying, yeah, you go up there and it's round that corner. I knew exactly where to go to get to the museums. Still had no explanation for why that was.
Yes, I had a friend, she went to York, and on that trip she went to this particular house. It was, a bit of a tourist attraction. I can't even remember whose it was, but she knew everything about the house. She knew, and she suddenly knew about the person whose house it belonged to, whom she thought she might have been, in a previous life, in medieval times, as it happened in that occasion. Some astonishing stories of recollection in that regard.
Mm-hmm.
And there's funny crossovers with times and stuff with the ET stuff that we haven't got a handle on yet, because we just haven't got all those points of reference. And as usual with the mind control and the bending of our perceptions, we can't possibly understand yet because we haven't been allowed to see the full deck. And I don't know when that will ever happen or how we'll ever get to know that, or if we will. But so it's very hard to make really informed decisions about what we think is going on.
Yeah.
Well, for me, I'll speak for myself.
I mean, something I actually wanted to ask you, Joanne. I've been following with interest the work of his name's just gone out of my head. The paradigm research, Steve Bassett. I should remember. We interviewed Steve when I was on Enemy Within with Tom. And he's pushing for Congress to disclose the reality of UFOs and ET contact.
Yeah.
Do you think he's actually got a cat in hell's chance?
Not in the current situation. If there is a sudden paradigm shift or something comes into the mix which forces the hand, and I don't know what that is, I think the status quo will remain because the power mismatch is still on their side.
Mm-hmm.
And until that essentially changes, because what that will mean, it's not just saying, guess what, folks, we know about it. I mean, we've had that, across the planet with various governments, including the MOD, releasing certain, let's give them a little tiny piece of this and that'll make them all feel good. Well, no, That's not the way it works. The way it works is that this stuff has implications for technology, economy, health, wellness, everything. It's a paradigm shift of gargantuan proportions, which we're due. And in the positive, I don't know whether that will ever be allowed in this particular, cycle of our human incarnation. I don't know, but I think we're cusping, perhaps cusping is the wrong word, on the fence energetically with that at the moment. And also, it's very difficult to know what other players there are unseen. In both parties, in both camps. So again, we can't really know, and we can guess. We can, I don't know. I don't know what you think about that. I absolutely, he's a very erudite, very articulate man, is Steve Bassett, and I've, spoken to him on many occasions, and he really didn't go for this stuff that I'm into very much at all. He really, kind of put that to one side, but I think he's embracing that much more now, like other, stellar researchers like Grant Cameron and people who just said it's all about consciousness. That's the end game. That's what this is all about. It's not the lights in the skies anymore. That's what it's all about. So, but he's come to a certain, epiphany in his road. But for the rest of us, I haven't had any epiphany.
Well, for me, the one thing that I think could so obviously change it is if they, whoever they are, just show up en masse. And
well, of course, and that's the extra thing in the mix, isn't it?
And I'd be very interested to see, if that does happen, how it's played, whether the government are going to say, oh, yeah, we've known about this for 100 years. We just thought, for your own good, we didn't tell you. Because to admit they've been lying to us for all these years, it's political suicide for anyone who's wanting to make that disclosure, isn't it?
Yeah, and also, this is a very, very broad spectrum field, in as much as we've got kind of the middle of the road. I don't know if you can even say that. I don't even, but anyway, I'll say it, just the middle sector of let's say, the ET abductee contactee experience, which let's say at its best, it forces a spiritual growth. In Bill's case, it completely changed him as a human being in a very positive way. His awareness was opened up. He'll tell you all of this. He can augment all of that. But this is what I see and hear with 99% of people, that whether they want it or not, it forces this growth in them, this expansion, and often linked with spiritual awareness, which is alongside as well. But then on the other side of the spectrum, there is all the what David M. Jacobs talks about, which is this sort of takeover business going on, and the absolute cruelty and other things that have been perpetuated and visited on certain human beings. Now, which I wouldn't want to be talking about, frankly. That it's not easy to talk about. It's not easy for people to hear about that, because that goes, as depraved and horrendous as humanity has a potential to be and has been, so too are the ETs in certain reportings of what people have been through. So, and then we go to the other end of the spectrum, which is, the higher masters, beings of awareness. All kinds of names have been visited to those folks, energetic forms, imprints, whatever, who are clearly have a love frequency and vibration as their main pivot point in communication, and then we've got all that in between. So it's there. It will bring with it some very deep things for humanity to recognize. And what Bill's been through is his case is so rounded in that he has all these different elements, from the mind control, and that's separate to the ET abduction in the army. I don't know whether you talked about the mind control, did you, Bill?
No.
The MK Ultra bit. I mean, this guy's been, really what he's been through is just unbelievable. So he's been through human orientated mind control through an MK, we'll call it an MK Ultra-esque kind of scenario. Bill can describe that if you're interested. And then there are the men in black that Bill's been exposed to. Now, these aren't the men in black that we normally hear about. These are men who happen to be dressed in black, who were clearly, well, perhaps I shouldn't say clearly human. They seem to be human, but they were also linked with the military, and they were then forcing upon Bill reading material of a kind which Bill can describe but this all ties in with the mind control, and then what the mind control, the fallout of what that did to Bill and how it impacted his whole life. I mean, it absolutely wrecked his ability to communicate as a human being for many, many years properly. And Bill, I think this is really important because there's a big dichotomy here. There's the fantastic, unbelievable, incredible ET element of the story, and then there is clearly military involvement, clearly Freemasons involvement. I mean, just very, very briefly, and then Bill, I think you should maybe tell some of that stuff. When he was only 9 years old, he was getting some material for his mum in town, and he was approached by two men in black again. These are human beings, Americans, as it happened, who said they were from the Rosicrucians. Now, already Bill was a bit of a loner at that time, and they went to his house, asked his parents if it was all right if he went to their club, whatever, for kids. And they obviously thought yes, and off Bill went. And they actually left him with the Royal Order of, is it Antediluvian Order of the Buffalo Club. And they said, kind of indicating that they'd come for him another time because maybe he was too young for the Rosicrucians. But guess what they were doing with him and other kids on wet days when they weren't teaching them baseball or whatever? They were getting them to use their mind with psychometry. They were trying to get them to use, all the things that the remote viewing team have been doing. They were getting these kids to do, telepathy exercises, getting kinetic exercises, all this stuff. So it's like they got him taped from a young age. And you just wonder, how did that work? How was that? And then because he smoked at 9 and they didn't like that, he got kicked out of that little club, which is actually probably all to the good, because I think it's Bill's phenomenally strong mind and own will that's actually kept him alive to this day. But Bill, why don't you? I know if the guys are interested, if you think the listeners are interested, I just think that other army bit and the MK Ultra bit is just, really important and shows army collusion.
Please.
Well,
Sorry, Bill. I was just going to say, please do. We'd love to hear about that, mate.
Right.
Are you feeling all right, Bill? Are you feeling okay? I know you're not feeling so great today.
Yeah, I'm not 100%.
I know, I can tell.
Not. I have been ill for about a week. I've had an infection in my mouth, but I'm having a bit of trouble talking, actually. You can probably tell I'm having a bit of trouble talking.
And actually, that infection is where you had an implant come out, isn't it, Bill?
Exactly the same place, yeah. Exactly the same place. Yeah.
Wow.
I threw both implants away. Why? I don't even know why I threw them away.
But do you want to just say, because again, this was in the very early days of when you joined the army, so we're still in '68 when these incidents were happening. Not only the MK Ultra kind of thing, which we'll call it for lack of another name, mind control programming, which happened. Actually, they transported you from America to England, didn't they?
Well, it was after the abductions.
Yeah.
It was after the 2 abductions with me and Joe. A sergeant came up to me. I'd got a charge back in England for fighting. I'd been fighting. When I joined the army, the police were looking for me. And he said if I signed on for this thing, it would get me out of all that trouble. So what do you do? I signed on to get myself out of trouble. I signed on for this course, thinking it was a flu jab. And it wasn't, it was something else.
Okay.
I can't even tell you what it was because I can't remember most of it.
But where did they take you, Bill?
Well, I think it was Porton Down. The West Wing, I think it was the West Wing of Porton Down. I think. From the signs I could see at the time. Because I was off my face at the time. That we'd been given injections and sugar lumps by then. And when we got to the camp, we were given more. So I was away with the fairies, I was,
And
do you have an idea of what they gave you, Bill?
I should imagine some kind of LSD. I should imagine. I don't know.
And Porton Down, that's the biological weapons establishment, isn't it?
That's right. And in 68, they were testing on unsuspecting, unwitting soldiers. This was known, and they were using LSD, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. They used other drugs as well, I think, from what I've gathered since. I mean, I don't know, because I didn't know anything about drugs anyway, you know. How would I know about drugs, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I was in the army, we didn't have drugs. In them days, we didn't. I think they do now.
So,
there's a few, but...
And you were only 18, for goodness sake.
mm-hmm. But if you've got very limited memories of this, Bill, in what form did that realization come to you? How did you suddenly realize that you had been mind controlled, and what were the effects on you?
Well, as I said, all this came back at 44.
Mm-hmm.
And it came back all mixed up. As you can imagine, a lifetime of memories waggling through your head, you know, blimping through your head. I don't know how to explain it. They were all in there, but they hadn't defragged themselves.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't in order. I was jumping from 1 year to 10 years. I couldn't put everything in order. It was as though there was no time on it. You know, there was no time to when all these things happened to me. And I had to start going back in the memory, and it took me, I don't know how many years, 9 years probably, to get all the memories back properly. And when I say properly, I've got no memory except for the abductions I've told you about,
Mm-hmm.
where I was inside the ship and all that. I've no memory of the middle part. And that's the same with you.
You got no memory of this middle part. How did these abductions? How did it end? How did the, you know, what? Where would you find yourself? Would you just be back where you started from?
Yeah, back where I started.
Yeah.
Near enough the same place normally. I found myself laying down after the one. I went through. This was the 9/11 time. There was quite a few things happened around about that time, and I knew I was going to be taken. I just knew. You know, I had the feeling, because you get the feeling you're going to be took. Once you know you're being took, you get a feeling. You know it's going to happen again. Well, on this occasion, I got shaky. I couldn't relax. I just couldn't relax. I just knew that something was coming. I just knew. I didn't know what, but I knew something. I just knew I was going to be took again. And I took my kids, my ex-partner and my son, up to a mountain up by where the Berwyn crash was, in fact. Clandillum. I forgot the name of the place. And I went back home, and I chased an orange ball for a while and got fed up with doing that because I couldn't catch it.
Mm-hmm.
And I went back home, and I know I'd got to fetch my family the next day, so it was about 2 o'clock in the morning probably by then, 2, maybe half 2. So I had a few pints on the way back. I had a couple of pints, you know, at the pubs on the way back.
Mm-hmm.
And I lay down on the bed, rolled myself a fag, lay down, put the cigarette in the ashtray, and as I did that, lights started flashing outside the window. Well, my first reaction was police,
Mm-hmm.
you know, which you'd think blue, red, green flashing lights outside your window. You think police, ambulance or something like that. Next thing I know, I'm coming up in upright position, standing upright. I got my nose against the curtains and my legs against the wall at the bottom, the window in the middle, and I just went straight through the lot. Next thing I know, I'm back again. I'm lying back on the bed, and I lay there for about a couple of hours, just trying to bring back the memory of the middle part. So I knew I'd been took and brought back. I just knew. Once you know, you know you're being took.
Mm-hmm.
Once you know you can't get away from it. And I spent a few hours trying to dig out my memory of what happened in between being taken and brought back. and nothing came. 3 hours, I just lay there.
Wow. Many abductees, experiencers, I'm not sure what the correct term is these days, they have quite pleasant experiences, but there's also quite a lot that have very unpleasant experiences that are terribly frightening. How would you classify yours, and were they all one or the other, or was there a mixture of that, Bill?
Well, not even a mixture really with me. Mine have been, I haven't had a really bad, as far as I know, because I can't remember the middle parts anyway.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember the middle parts of most of the abductions, you know. But as far as I know, excuse me, as far as I know, I haven't had anything really bad happen to me.
Okay.
Only mentally.
Yeah, it must be.
Which is the part that I don't talk about.
No, that's fair enough. Many people report medical procedures, or what seem like medical procedures, being carried out on them while they're on board the craft. Have you really that sort of experience?
Yeah, well, as I said, when I lay on the couch, bed, I don't know what to call it.
Mm-hmm.
As I lay there, I saw some equipment behind me, something behind me. As I said, I couldn't see very well at all because I was very stiff, couldn't move at all, really. But I felt something hot go up my nose on the right hand side. Then I felt something go into my ear. The thing that went up my nose burnt, like burning sensation. The thing that went into my ear was hot, but not burning, just warm, you know. That felt warm. And then I saw something coming towards my eye. And that was the last of what I remember of that part of it. That's all I remember of procedures. And then I was in another room, or the same room, and the room had changed. And there was a screen, like a video, which I'd never seen. I hadn't seen videos then. But I could see on this screen, what I remember seeing is a baby being born and a war. And that's the two things that come to mind when I look. There may have been more, but that's what I remember.
Yeah. We've got a question from the chat room for you, Bill, and it's from Nolan. And Nolan would like to know, Bill says he hasn't been abducted for the last 4 years. Does he think he hasn't been taken, or that they have put him back into a state where he can't remember? Have you any thoughts on that, Bill?
I don't think I've been taken. I can't remember anything strange in the last 4 years at all. You know, normally I know this. Before I was 44, I would have been taken, and anything strange that happened, I would have dismissed. I'd have dismissed before I was 44. I don't dismiss things now like I used to. If I think something strange happened, I think back and think what it is. And I haven't had that in 4 years at all. So I'm not. It's a good question, but I'm not sure.
Yeah,
but I tell you what I think is quite interesting as well, Bill, that you might not flag up that much, but I think it's quite important. And it's almost as if bits of yourself have been released or freed up in you, because I remember us having a conversation and I'd said, oh, where are we in the month? And it was March, and you started talking about your guitar playing and how suddenly you couldn't put the guitar down, and you were like a new, like an 18-year-old again with it, and you were doing this new style to yourself. And you were kind of marveling at that, and also because you seem to have an incredible aptitude for the guitar, and also had you pushed yourself beyond just being comfortable with what you did in your living, you think that you could have taken it really, really to very high ends indeed. But that seems to be an incredibly easy thing. But this new aspect of talent sort of revealed itself to you, and you just took it on board and did an open mic night, and someone said to you, gosh, how long have you been doing that? And you said about 5 hours. They said, gosh, I thought that was about 5 years. That was this.
Yeah. a finger style that I had to put together because I play lead guitar, which is, down, shadows, rock and roll, all that stuff. So I'm a rock and roll guitarist, really. Not really a finger picking love song man,
Mm-hmm.
Bit like our Keno.
Yeah.
Bit like our Bill.
Yeah.
I want to just touch on something that we spoke about earlier on. I mentioned that I've been to King Swinford today, and you said that there was some sort of...
Oh my God, yeah, that's a memory.
So how's about you tell us about that, what that is? Because I've been there today.
Whereabouts in King Swinford you been?
Do you know, it's a company, and they are...
on a trading estate.
Yeah, on a trading estate just outside Dudley. I'm trying to think back, but...
Yeah, I can't remember the name of the trading estate either.
No, but it was in King Swinford anyway, because I thought it was such a grandiose name. It stood out for me.
Not MAJ Electronics you've been to, is it?
No.
He's on that. MAJ Electronics is on that.
MAJ Electronics. What does MAJ Electronics stand for?
Well, it's Mick and Jane actually it stands for, but MAJ, he put it out as he used to do all the, well, he still does, equipment for all the big bands, I used to meet some of the bands down at the shop where he got a big repair shop on the estate for, amplifiers, guitars, things like that.
Right, no, I've been to I'll have been to a different place. Just so we're on a trading estate, but interesting. So, what happened in King Swinford?
Well, that's where I was living during being taken at Abingdon and those areas. That's where I was living.
But wasn't it around that neck of the woods that the massive ball bearing?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right.
Have you told that story?
Yeah, well, I worked on a trading estate in King Swinford.
That's amazing. This is absolutely knockout.
Sorry, I've got so many things that I don't know where to start. I was working for a firm called P&P Non-Ferrous on King Swinford Trading Estate, and my job normally entailed doing Wolverhampton in the morning or Birmingham in the morning, or Birmingham vice versa in the afternoon. But we had a rush job on the one day, and it was for a large phosphor bronze bearing for a ship, weighing about, I don't know, 2/3 of a ton probably. So I'm shooting off at about 11 o'clock. I'm shooting off to Redditch to pick up this bearing. Normally the whole journey would take about 1.5 hours there and back, as long as I didn't stop for any reason, which I didn't.
Mm-hmm.
I went to Redditch, and as I was pulling...
I've been to Redditch today.
Oh, you've been to Redditch as well today?
My first drop was Redditch, my second drop was Droitwich, and my third drop was King Swinford, and then my fourth drop was in Wolverhampton, and then I had Newcastle under Lyme.
Well, this happened to me. I was in Moon's Moat. You know Moon's Moat, Redditch?
I know.
I know where I deliver to in Redditch. That's it.
I know Moon's Moat. Yeah.
I'm the same. Yeah. Sorry.
Sorry, you know it, do you, Andy?
Yeah. Well, this is getting quite bizarre. I mean, synchronicities are the order of the day in my life. Just things happen. I'm thinking, what the hell? I mean, we started off with Bill talking about Freemasonry, and my other half ordered a book from Amazon a few days ago, and it arrived today. And the name of the book is The Brotherhood by Stephen Knight, all about Freemasonry. So, and also you mentioned P&P Non-Ferrous. I've been there.
if you ask the secretary that was there in 1980, I've spoke to her once. The secretary that was there in 19. I'm not going to give you my name over the air, but
No, fine.
if you go in and say the guy that she doesn't remember the missing metal, which that's the reason I got the sack.
Mhm.
Hey, Bill, we haven't even got to the story yet. How about we go back to the story
Yeah,
and then
sorry.
get to that bit, because that's amazing.
I sidetracked you there. Sorry, Bill.
Yeah, sorry, I've lost the gist now. Can you?
Yeah, so you're an hour and a half there and back to Moonsmoke to pick up this metal, because you're doing some driving around and you've got to pick up this 2/3 of a ton of phosphor bronze.
I've got it. Well, I picked the metal up, strap it on. I was using a pickup, a Nissan pickup at the time, and I strapped the metal on, and I drove out of Moonsmoke towards Bromsgrove.
Oh, fucking hell.
As I come towards the Bromsgrove Road, I was coming down to the island. At that time, it had only just been built. This part of where you go onto the roads were just only just been built, sort of thing. These new roads had, and there was an island, but nowhere to come from. Each side there was nowhere to come from.
Mm-hmm.
But as I was coming down towards the island, an old Woody Ford. That's the best car I can explain to you. I don't know if you know what the Ford Woody was in the 1940s.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but there was it stopped in front of me as I was coming down towards the island. I stopped, not realising which way this car was going. And also, one thing I forgot to mention was that it was on the wrong side of the island. This car was to go around it, because I thought that's weird, but it stopped. And they stared at me in sort of disbelief. There was someone in the back pointing at me, and I think it was dimensional, because the next thing I know, I'm back up the same road, coming back towards the same island again, and everything's gone. Car's gone. Nothing's there. So I go across the island. As I'm going across the island, I look to my left into a field, and I thought it was a children's bouncy castle at first. Just this object in the middle of the field. And as I pulled onto the main road, there was no one coming at all on my side. Nothing at all on the road, which was very unusual for that time of day. I turned onto the road, looked in my mirror to see if anybody was coming up quickly on me, as you do. And I saw this object go over me, a silver object, like a big aeroplane type structure thing. And then everything went black. And then as the light came back, because everything went completely dark, as the light came back, oh yeah, next to me there was someone talking to me, like a woman talking to me. But there was no one there.
In a black country accent as well, eh?
Yeah, in my accent at the time.
Wow.
Which is deep black country, you know. And then it went dark to light. But as that was happening, I think it went dark to light a couple of times, but I'm not 100% sure. As that was happening, the road started to change, and the vehicles coming towards me started to get older and older vehicles, and the road seemed to get smaller. And as I pulled, the next thing I know, I'm back driving myself. I'm then driving the wheel, and I'm coming towards what I thought was a 1950s police car, like light blue with fins and stuff on the back.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw it. Next thing I know, I've got wasps and bees, I thought, buzzing all around the cab of the vehicle, all around my head. So I grabbed a magazine and started smacking out at them. At the same time, pulling over you're a driver, Jason, you know what I'm talking about. I was hitting these bloody wasps and bees as I was trying to pull over into a lay-by. Well, as I pulled over into the lay-by where I saw the police car had disappeared. That had gone as well. So my mind's sort of spinning, and I dive out my cab, and there's no bees and wasps. And I'm thinking, have I gone mad? And I looked down at my chest because I got my shirt out, you know, Jack the lad in them days. Got my shirt out, you know, showing my chest off to all the women, you know. You know what you like, you know what you like as a driver, big time. And I looked down, and there was 2 holes where my heart is, and I'm sure I could see my heart beating through these 2 holes in my chest. Of course, I forgot all about it, and when I got back, everything, all this had gone out my memory. And I got back, and I pulled up, and they said, "Where have you been for the last 4 hours?" And I said, "I haven't been 4 hours. I've only been up to Redditch and back. You must have gone home for dinner." "I haven't been anywhere. You must have took your wife to work." I ain't been anywhere, you know. What are you talking about?" So there was a big row in the office. And they said, "Anyway, get the metal off." "All right, then get the metal off." So I went outside. There was no metal on the wagon. The metal had gone.
E.T. had nicked 2/3 of a ton of phosphor bronze.
Phosphor bronze, yeah, it's gone. I just threw the keys at him and walked away. I thought, I can't handle this, you know. That's a good way to lose a job, you know. Have anything to do with E.T. You won't work very long if you're a driver. Telling you that.
Well, yeah, I've lost a lot of driving jobs over the years, Bill, but I've never had anything like that happen to me. That's quite remarkable.
I've lost 2 jobs because of that, because of time, you know.
And that thing
also,
with...
I mean, although Bill's cut the story, short, just condensed it, there was a lot of hoo-ha about this time difference. And, you know, they even showed him the bloody clock saying, "Look, it's 4 o'clock. And Bill knew that if he left at 11:30 or 12, he was still only going to be an hour and a half.
Mhm.
And he knew absolutely in his mind that nothing had happened. And he didn't even remember the interaction of the wasp thing. And the reason that also that he had such a panic about thinking it was wasps was because he suffers from anaphylactic shock if he gets stung. So that's a, life-threatening condition. So he was, trying to deal with that as soon as possible. And it's interesting because another researcher called Phil Hoyle had something to say about this kind of electrical activity, didn't he, Bill?
Yeah, he said, well, I put it down to wasps and bees.
Yeah.
As I say, I haven't changed any of my story. And anything I've learned since I wrote it, I haven't changed anything, nothing's changed. Except the one part where I believed it was wasps and bees, and Phil Hoyle said, it's got to be static electricity. And I thought, well, that sounds more intelligent than what I said. Because it disappeared when I opened the door of the cab. Just disappeared. So
I don't know if it's to do with intelligence. It's to do with your frame of reference and what information you have. You didn't have any more information at the time. So, but it does have a logical kind of ring to it.
I've still got no information.
Well,
really,
yeah.
I'm just saying what I saw in front of my own eyes and what happened to me. And I'm not trying to put any deduction on it, or I'm not trying to deduce anything from it. I've got my own thoughts, of course, but I don't know what's happened to me. I don't know what the things are that's been taking me. I don't know whether they're dimensional, alien, whatever they are. I'm just going by what other people say, what they are, because I don't know. I know it's happened, and that's all I know.
Bill, the incident with the wasps and the bees in your cab, has anything like that ever happened before or since?
No.
I'll just ask him because someone posted in the chat room that they'd had some similar experiences, and he said it sounds like a precursor to grand mal epileptic seizure, which is something I've no experience, so I can't comment on. I just didn't know.
Yeah. Yeah. But they can't all be.
It's the only time I've had that experience of feeling as though there's static electricity all around me, or wasps and bees. I mean, I know now it was static electricity, but at the time, I couldn't think of anything else because it was buzzing.
Yeah.
I suppose my brain told me it was wasps or bees, or wasps and bees, or whatever. And that's my brain telling me that, because of the noise of the buzzing.
Well, also, I think, this was also before Bill had this download. So he's again, and what's happened with Bill throughout his life, and from a research point of view, I've got to know Bill very well, and so have an overview of his life. that he shared, and really, his mind right from the get-go has been absolutely very tightly compartmentalized, to the point when, you know, his brother would try and tell him that he'd seen him being taken, and Bill would just think that was, you know, total nonsense, and, you know, it really ruined his relationship with his brother. So Bill's lost a lot through ET intervention, and this isn't even mentioning kind of the serial killer element, which is the only time he says he's ever been frightened. I mean, that's right, isn't it, Bill? You said, you know, really, you're nonplussed. I mean, you know, you had lots of health issues as a result of, you know, a lot of what's gone on, but also the sorry, I've just lost my thread now.
When talking about the fear element,
yeah, but it was only that one event which wasn't an ET event, maybe,
which I believe is connected to them. I mean, I'm not sure if that was connected, but I think it was connected.
Well, in the last few minutes of the time that we've got, Bill, could you possibly tell us a little bit about that?
Well, I had a marriage breakup in Germany. Well, what happened was I met Fred and Rosemary West. I was hitchhiking, and she picked me up thinking I was him because I looked just like him at the time. Because I was quite an hefty guy. I broke my ankles, in fact. I was on a special forces training course, and I broke my ankles, and I was off work for quite a while. I was working in a bar, just running the sergeant's mess bar. Well, my ankles were healing, and my ankle was starting to heal, and I could start to walk okay without a walking stick and stuff. So I was dropped off in Bristol the one time to hitchhike on my way home, and it was a bit late, and I couldn't get home for a pint, and I was quite a big drinker. So I went into a pub there at this little village. I don't know what it was. And as I went in, they said, "Are you Fred's brother?" I said, "Fred who?" They said, "Oh, Fred lives in the caravan." I said, No, I'm not his brother." And the guy said, "Oh, you look just like him."
Can I just say, sorry, really quick thing. This is donkey's years before anybody had ever heard of Fred West, or before that, at least 20 years before he was on the radar. Sorry.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, this was 1980. 1970. When was it?
70. What? 70.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, 1970. Yeah. 71, in fact. 1971, October-ish. She stopped the van. I wasn't even hitchhiking. I hadn't got my thumb out. And she stopped the van and shouted, "Get in there." In quite a nasty way, in fact. So I got in, and there was a girl behind me pulling at my sleeve, saying, "Can you help me? They're going to kill me." Rosemary West started laughing and said, "Don't worry, it's my daughter's mucking about. I have to tie her legs together to stop her running off with men into Bristol." Well, of course I was drunk. I've been in the pub all night, you know. It didn't really bother me about having to walk home drunk, you know. I was so used to it, you know. And she dropped me off on the main road.
No, you missed out a really important bit. Sorry to interrupt. She pulled your arm again, and then she showed you something on the floor.
Oh yeah, she lifted up a tarpaulin on the floor, and there was a girl underneath. I believe it to be a girl. It was very dark, so I was only getting glimpses of what I was seeing. I realise now that was a dead girl. I think it was. And I didn't realise the situation, which you wouldn't, would you? You just wouldn't think of. You're sitting next to somebody that's a murderer. You know, you just wouldn't. It wouldn't cross your mind, would it? You know.
No.
Might now, with all the things that have happened, there's more news now. We get more news in every way. But what happened a couple of years later was, and this is the frightening one. I lost my key to I lived in a block of flats in Germany, and the street was called Friedhofstrasse, which translates to Cemetery Street. It was built on a massive big cemetery, this estate was. And my marriage broke up with my wife, and I went out for a drink with a few of my mates. Sort of, because I got nothing to do. I was in trouble. I'd just come out of prison. In fact, I was put in a German prison for a while after scrapping with her and her boyfriend when they attacked me. So anyway, I'm out of prison, and I'm go out for a drink with some of the lads, and I'd lost the key to the bottom of the flat. There was 2 keys, one into my flat and one for the bottom door of the flat. Security key. I'd lost the security key. My wife had took it, and we'd split. She took it home with her to her mother's. So I hadn't got a key. I didn't want to go to her mother's. I didn't want the argument. So I was getting in through a window that led to the floor of the cellar. And as I was coming into the cellar the one day, I felt like, as I was pulling my legs down the wall, it felt like something was holding onto me. And I turned myself around to see what it was. And I looked, and there was a hole where the floor should be. And these, like, spirit entities, I don't know what to call them really, all entwined into each other. And, like, talking all together in whatever language it was, couldn't tell. It just sounded like millions of voices, all speaking at the same time. And like a whooshing sound as well. There was a whooshy sound as well. And I felt like I'd been dragged into this hole. And that's the most... I'm not really the sort of person that gets frightened. I'm not a frightened... It takes a lot to frighten me. It really does,
But you did think, Bill, that this might be visited upon you as a sort of punishment for not saving this girl who for sure would have died, who sure would have been murdered.
Yeah. A lot of things have occurred to me, Maybe I was having his nightmares. Maybe his nightmares were bodies coming out the ground. That, because they were my nightmares from him, from her, as such. Whatever went into me gave me those nightmares. They really did. And those nightmares were horrendous. I am right up until the time he died, until he killed himself. And when they caught him, I even told my son's mother where the bodies were in the cellar. I even told her. And she
the
said,
thing was that we've missed out here is when Bill had turned round to see what was pulling at him, and he described them as these wraith-like beings, which were very similar to the ones that came out of the Ark of the Covenant in the old Indiana Jones film, very similar, but also that the whole of the cellar had changed proportion.
Yeah,
looking just like the Fred West one that was seen 20 years later on the TV as the police showed it. So
yeah, it did look very, very similar to that one instead of the one I was... Because when I went down again, I mean, it took me a while to go down there because it had to be broad daylight for me to go down there again. I mean, I'm not a sort of person that gets frightened very easily, but that frightened me. That really did frighten me.
I think we're out of time now, aren't we, Andy?
Yeah, absolutely. It's been absolutely fascinating talking with you, Bill and Joanne. Yeah, we've run out of time. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. And I'd just like to say we've got a pretty special lineup for Thursday night. And we've got Rob B coming back on. I think most people know what the B stands for. But we've got a bit of a coup because we've got Rob Freeman joining him as well. So we'll be having Rob Freeman and Rob B. And they'll be digging a bit into council tax, and I'm sure that'll be an education for us all. So thanks for listening, everyone. Thank you again, Joanne and Bill, and thanks again, Jason, of course.
Yeah, can I just say, big up to me, brother. I'll get you Gersh for Monday. Thinking about you, mate.
Yeah. Okay.
Did you hear that, Bill? That might have been for you.
Oh, sorry, I missed it. Sorry, no.
Oh, for God's sake, you're going to have to say it again, Jason.
Well, don't matter, it weren't for Bill.
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry, I thought that was some Black Country stuff there.
No, I missed it. I didn't...
Oh, God.
No worries. Thank you ever so much for joining us tonight. And thank you for everyone for listening. We really appreciate your support. and we'll see you
Well,
on
I
Thursday.
hope it was okay because I know Bill wasn't too well tonight, so it's been a bit disjointed. But thanks for your patience, everybody.
No,
It's
we
hard
absolutely
sometimes.
appreciate it. Thank you, Bill. And good night, everyone.